Welcome back. We are going to be working in this video on factoring trinomials or expressions with three terms that are in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. And the difference between this and our previous video is that my coefficient of the x squared term or the squared term is not 1. Now you can use trial and error. To me that's kind of like sitting in the truck spinning my wheels in the mud and not getting anywhere. Or we can use a process called factor by grouping. We always start when we're factoring by asking ourselves some questions. So we're asked to factor 2x squared plus 19x minus 10. And our first question should always be greatest common factor. Do I have one? Looking at my terms, I've got two evens and one odd. So 2 is not going to divide 19. They all do not have that variable of x. So in this case, the answer is no. The next question we should ask ourselves, is a equal to 1? Is that coefficient on the squared term 1? If so, use the process from the previous video. If not, we're going to use something called the AC method. That means we're going to first identify A, B, and C. A is the coefficient of the squared term. B is the coefficient of the linear term, or the term that's just the plain variable with the exponent of 1. And C is the constant. Once we have them identified, we need to find the product A times C. In this case, I've got 2 times negative 10 equals negative 20. Now I need to find factors of AC, in this case negative 20, whose sum is B, in this case 19. Now if you can see what those two factors are, the pair that works, great, you can write them down. If not, you can make your factor chart. Factors, negative 20, sum 19, just like in our previous process. So looking, I have a product that's a negative 20 here, so I have to have one positive and one negative factor to equal the negative 20. So I can start with negative 1 times a positive 20. Well, golly, comes out to a positive 19. That's my set. If you don't find it on the first try, just keep going through the list of factors until you find it. Once we have that set, the factor pair, we are going to rewrite our middle term of 2x squared plus 19x minus 10 using those two factors. So I'm going to have 2x squared minus x plus 20x minus 10. So all I did was split the 19 out. When I add those terms together, that negative x and positive 20x, I'm going to arrive back at 19x. So we're really driving that FOIL in reverse. We're still working on that. Now that we have the middle term rewritten using my two factors, we're going to factor by grouping. What that means is we're going to take this polynomial and we're going to divide it into two sections. We're going to look at just the first two terms to begin and find the greatest common factor between 2x squared minus x. You should notice that's x, 2x minus 1. Then I'm going to look at my second two factors, or I should say second two terms, and I notice that the greatest common factor between 20x and negative 10 is a positive 10. And what you need to see when you're at this point is that the binomials that we just created match exactly. So we have that common binomial is one of our binomial factors. The second one is made up of the other two terms that we factored out. So the second binomial becomes x plus 10. The factorization of 2x squared plus 19x minus 10 is 2x minus 1 times x plus 10. Let's check it using FOIL. So 2x minus 1, x plus 10, 2x squared plus 20x minus x minus 10. Combining my like terms, notice the two factors are right here. So we truly are driving FOIL in reverse. This product, when I combine my like factors, brings us back to our original expression. I know this seems complicated. Don't panic. We're going to do a couple more examples and we're going to practice a lot in class. So just hang in there with me a few more minutes. Let's look at example 15. First off, factor 3b squared minus 13b plus 4. Do I have a greatest common factor? 3 is prime, and it will not divide either 13 or 4, so that tells me no for the constants, and I don't have a b in that last term, so no, I don't have a greatest common factor. Next is a 1. Nope. So that means we're going to do that AC method. First step was identify A, B, and C. Find the product of A times C, and that's 3 times 4, which will give me a positive 12. So I need to find factors of 12 whose sum is negative 13. The better you know your multiplication tables, the better it's going to be for you in factoring. So if you're a little rusty, go back and freshen up. I have a positive product, negative total, so that tells me I need a negative times a negative here. So I just start with negative 1 times negative 12. Negative 1 plus negative 12. It's negative 13. Well, look at that. I found my set on the first try. If that doesn't happen, just keep going through your factors. Now, I rewrite. I'm going to move over just a little bit because it's a little cramped. My middle term using these two factors. So I've got 3b squared minus 12b minus b plus 4. And it doesn't matter which order you write them in. It will always work out. Now we're going to divide and conquer. We're going to look at the first two terms and decide on the greatest common factor. I can see that I have a 3b. So I'm left with b minus 4. Looking at my second two terms, I have negative b plus 4. Well, the greatest common factor is going to be a 1, but I need to decide if I'm going to factor out a positive 1 or a negative 1. What I need to remember is that my binomial pieces, or my common binomial, has to match exactly. So in order to get a lead of a positive b, I'm going to factor out negative 1, and then I'm left with b minus 4. My binomials are the common binomial And then the greatest common factors that we just factored out. I drop them into place. 3b minus 1. So the binomials b minus 4 and 3b minus 1, when I multiply them together, should produce 3b squared minus 13b plus 4. So let's FOIL and check out and make sure that we didn't make a mistake. First outer, inner, and last. Combine my like terms. Very good, we did a good job. Why don't you pause the video now and try and complete example 16. Hint, there is a greatest common factor between the three terms. Let's see how you did. Our questions are: 1. Greatest common factor. Well, I told you there was one, and you should have determined that that is 4. So our first step is to factor out 4. So I'm left with 4x squared minus 4x minus 3. Now, with just the piece in the parentheses, the trinomial in the parentheses, we continue with our questions. 2. A equal 1? No. So we're going to need to do AC. We need to identify A, B, and C. A is a positive 4, B is a negative 4, and C is a negative 3. So I find A times C, that's 4 times negative 3, which is negative 12. Factors of negative 12, whose sum is negative 4. In order to get a negative product, I need to have a positive times a negative. So, negative 1 times a positive 12 gives me 11. Negative 2 times a positive 6, well, that gives me a positive 4. Once I'm here, I can try positive 2 times negative 6 and get the answer. So all I did was switch the signs on my factors to find the two factors that work in this situation. Next, we're going to split that center term. And when you factor out a greatest common factor, you just carry it down. So I have 4x squared plus 2x minus 6x minus 3. And don't panic, yours might not look exactly like mine. You might have the minus 6x and 2x switched. Now we factor by grouping. 4 here, and I'm going to put a bracket out. The common factor between 4x squared and 2x should have determined that was 2x, and then I'm left with 2x plus 1. Looking at my next set, the greatest common factor is 3. Remembering I have to have my two binomials match exactly, so I'm going to factor out negative 3, and I'll be left with 2x plus 1. Carry down my 4. Then my common binomial goes here, and those two terms, or greatest common factors that we factored out, go in the next location. So 4 times 2x plus 1 times 2x minus 3 is the factorization. Hope you did well. We're going to move on into the next video on special factoring. See you there.